What are some tips that you can give to the podcasting community about growing and fostering the community relationship?
Again, that's kind of a tricky one where social media is constantly changing, what which one is hot at the moment. Everybody's now, talking about TikTok, whereas before we had Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And again, one of the things we try to do is go to where our listeners are, try to engage with them. We have a Reddit channel as well, but to bring the personalities of the hosts. Everybody can post what they want there. And sometimes it's off the wall stuff, sometimes it's show announcements, but to keep it engaging beyond just, hey, we have a show. We talk about movies. So let's talk about movies on these pages, especially on days when we don't have a show. Try to make it a point to post something about movies and get some discussion going, either with a current article that's come out, oh boy, Sony's moved all of their movies back again 6 months. So what do you guys think they should go to streaming? Or conversely, Warner's putting all of their movies on streaming. Are you looking forward to watching them at home? Those kinds of discussions, or just reviews of movies that we haven't done on the show. Oh, I saw this movie. Who's seen it? Who likes it?
And I think that's huge. The fact that you recognize too that there are the outlets outside of the podcast too. One thing I always try to, bring up with our podcasters is you have to be part of the community. Your podcast becomes part of not just the podcasting community, but the community that you are etching yourself in. Like you said, if you're talking about movie reviews, you are now part of the movie industry. If you have a wrestling podcast, you're part of the wrestling industry. So if you're just kind of expecting the podcast itself to be the end all of the promotion, then I think you're doing your podcast and the community itself a disservice. You want to be known as a figure in the community, or an authority in the community, if you will. And not, like you said, an authority where you're looking down on somebody, but somebody can look to you and say, okay, they have this podcast, they have these channels, and we can communicate with them about the topics that we love also.
And if I can just also interject, I talked about the common hosts on the show, but one of the reasons I feel like we've been very good with engaging with the community is through the efforts of Jason, who is an associate producer on our show. He's been really active in growing our social media, staying engaged with social media. He started up last year our weekly newsletter, the In Focus newsletter. He's been reaching out, and while we don't have sponsors, he's been reaching out to Paramount Pictures and things. We've been giving away a lot of digital downloads and even some physical copies of movies through the newsletter, being able to discuss, again, the podcast as well as other movie stuff through that. And we have a team of people who make Now Playing possible. We have editors like Heath, who's overseas and really helping us out. We have several hosts. We have Brock, and we have Justin and Marjorie who come on the show. We have a graphic designer named Joe who does amazing cover art. And I think all of these people coming together and working and engaging with the audience in their different ways. Everybody has different opinions, but we all try to give them, a little bit of a platform, either on the show or through social media, where everybody can engage. And I think we wouldn't be able to keep the show coming out every single Tuesday if it was just one person editing, one person posting. The fact that we have this team has enabled us to have this consistency and to keep our social media posts varied and not just one person, one host's point of view.
Sure. And the fact that you brought up the team that you have, not just with the hosts, but other people who can help out with other parts of the podcast. As a podcast grows in popularity and as a podcast grows in, developing that community, I think it's important to really build a team of people, whether that's everyone that's a host doing a different role, or whether you say, maybe at this point we'll outsource this part of it. Maybe we'll go ahead and have an editor that's elsewhere. Maybe, as you said, we'll have somebody who does all the graphic art. At one point, I think it becomes a conversation of what can we feasibly do and how can we do our best work? Well, we'll focus on this specific workload. We'll focus on this specific part of what we know we can kind of keep internally. And then we'll look to other people that are able to deliver that vision for us outside of that. I think a lot of podcasters, and what I tend to say a lot, is that a lot of podcasters are very much a solo effort. Maybe two people, maybe three people, maybe just one person. So they're the marketing manager, they're the person making the graphics, they're the one recording the podcast, they're the host of the podcast. That can all take up a lot of time. And I think it's really smart that you guys have started to delegate those tasks out, not just to the host, but to other people in other fields that can really help bring your vision to life too.
Yeah, and it's not something we've done recently. Again, we wouldn't have been able to keep up the output we have for so long. We've been working with outside editors and graphic designers. People have changed roles over the years, but since the very beginning, we've had multiple editors on this show. We've had multiple graphic designers because I know what my skills are and aren't, and Photoshop is not one of them.